8. What's up, guys? This is Bobby Douglas. Welcome to another video. So today I am revealing my Magic 8 for the 2020-2021 college basketball season. And basically the Magic 8 is kind of a predictive exercise in which a person will list 8 teams and then guarantee that one of those 8 teams will win the national championship. The Magic 8 was started by Grant Wahl in 2001 when he was working for Sports Illustrated, and he has his own set of rules that I'll adhere to here, but also Sports Illustrated still does this every year, and I think it's a really fun exercise to do. They usually do it in January or early February, but because I'm built different, I'll be doing mine in early December. So I haven't really seen these teams play a whole lot, but, I do think I am pretty confident in what I'm about to show you guys. So here we go. Before I give you my 8 teams, it's definitely necessary to explain the rules and the guidelines established by Grant Wahl, so I'll do that right here. So basically, there are only 2 major rules that you have to follow when establishing a Magic 8 for a college basketball season. The first rule is that you must omit 2 teams from the top 8 of the current AP poll. This prevents you from just taking the top 8 teams and just saying, oh yeah, I'm just going to take these top 8 teams to win it all. You can't do that. Obviously, you need a little spice in there. You need a little variety. Otherwise, there's no real point in doing the Magic 8 because the Magic 8 would be established all the time anyway in whatever current rendition of the AP poll that you're looking at. So this rule makes total sense, and I will adhere to it in this video. The second rule is that you must select one team from outside the current top 15 of the latest AP poll. And this is a good rule as well because it makes you pick a sleeper. And I actually think it's a lot more advantageous to predictors like myself just because you get a very high value prediction without a whole lot of consequences because you are insured by those 7 better teams based on the AP poll. So with those guidelines established, you can now hold me accountable to this statement. One of the following 8 teams will win the 2021 NCAA Tournament. So the first team in my Magic 8 is the Michigan State Spartans. I like Michigan State primarily because of Rocket Watts and Tom Izzo. I think Rocket Watts is just kind of a perfect point guard for Tom Izzo in Michigan State. He's tough, can play really good defense, runs the break extremely well. And I think in terms of mentality, Rocket Watts and Tom Izzo are just so even keel that I think it's a very, very good combination. Alongside him, you have Aaron Henry, who I think is probably the best NBA prospect on this roster. 6'6" wing, can guard multiple positions. He's tough, can hit the 3-ball when he's open, attacks the rim well, finishes through contact. Then you also add in Marquette transfer Joey Hauser, who had to sit out last year, but he's a big stretch 4, can shoot the 3 extremely well, has good touch around the basket. So those 3 players are really the star standouts for me. For the Spartans, you obviously have great depth at Michigan State as well. You have Gabe Brown, who is a very good wing shooter. You have a Malik Hall, another wing. You have a front court depth of Tomas Kithier. You have Mady Sissoko, the freshman, who's just a beast. You have Marcus Bingham. You have Julius Marble, who I actually think is kind of a Xavier Tillman light. And so you have all that front court depth. You have Foster Loyer in the backcourt, who can kind of spell Rocket Watts when needed. And then you also bring back Josh Langford, who just adds an elite level shooter, a 3-level scorer. He was injured for the last 2 seasons, I think, and now he's back and he's contributing. He's in the starting lineup, and he's a 5th-year senior as well, so you get that veteran leadership and experience. And overall, I just really like the way this Michigan State roster is constructed. I do worry about their level of turnovers, though. I think that's the main concern with Michigan State, as it's been for a majority of the recent years. But overall, I really like the toughness, I like the energy, and I just like the togetherness that this team plays with. And that's why they get a spot in my Magic 8. Next on my list is Tennessee. I really like Tennessee because they have so much talent, they have so much depth, they play hard, they play physical, and also I think their offense is really going to come along in the season as well. Listen, they have 2 5-star freshmen, and they aren't starting either of them at this point in the season. They have Jaden Springer, who's a 5-star shooting guard from IMG Academy, and you also have Keon Johnson, who has just been rocketing up draft boards due to his athleticism and defensive tenacity. Listen, this Tennessee team is absolutely loaded in terms of its talent. You have Santiago Vescovi, who is a proven, tough veteran point guard for them. You have Victor Bailey Jr., the transfer from Oregon, who can give you 8 points a game on the wing. You have Josiah Jordan-James, who was a 5-star recruit as well, recruited as a point guard in high school, and now he's playing the 3 for you. So he adds a level of playmaking and just overall athleticism that you expect from 5-star players. Then you get into their front court, which is just an absolute bear to deal with. They have 3 guys, in my opinion, who are just loads to deal with around the basket. You first have Yves Pons, the Frenchman, who was an early entrant in the NBA draft, decided to come back to Tennessee after some staggered decisions towards the end, but he's a guy Just look at him. He's like 6'6". I don't even know how much he weighs, but he's a bull. He can rebound. He can get to the basket anytime he wants when he's in the post because of that strength. Needs to work on his handle a little bit, but overall, this guy is an NBA prospect in my opinion. So I'm really excited to see what he can do this year. You also have John Fulkerson, who had some really good games last year. He's a double-digit scorer, and he's going to be a guy who can finish around the basket, provide pretty decent defense as well. So that front court is loaded. And you also bring in EJ Anosike from Sacred Heart, who was a 15 and 11 guy there last season. And he's a guy who just adds to that depth in the front court. So listen, I look at this Tennessee team. This team can go 8 deep easily. They have 8 starters on this roster, in my opinion. And listen, if they can click right away, I'm not sure if they will, but the talent on this roster is probably top 5 in the country. So if they can just figure it out, learn to play with each other, I think this Tennessee team is by far the best team in the SEC, as well as a very solid national championship contender. The next team in my Magic 8 is Illinois. The Fighting Illini, I think, have the best team since they went to the national championship in 2005. It all starts with Ayo Dosunmu for them. The junior guard is currently averaging 23 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists a game. Could have gone to the NBA, but he decided to return to Champaign for his 3rd season in the orange and blue. And listen, this Illinois team is loaded. Obviously, you have Dosunmu, who's really good. You also bring back Kofi Coburn, the big man who is just a beast. Might be one of the strongest basketball players in America right now with his frame. He's a play finisher. He can catch lobs for alley-oops, can defend the rim on the other end, needs to get a little bit better in space or else teams are going to target him. But overall, he brings a much-needed physical presence to Illinois. Outside of Ayo and Kofi, you also bring back 3 really key pieces from last year's team. You have Trent Frazier, who is now a senior. He started his career in Illinois as more of a scoring-oriented guard, but he really kind of took over the role as just the top perimeter defender on this team. And he's really just been a key player for Illinois over these past few seasons. He can make clutch shots, and he can also D up the opposing team's best guard. You also get back DeMonte Williams, who was a starter on last year's team, but didn't really contribute a whole lot to box score stats, but he can do a little bit of everything. He can score it from time to time. He can shoot it. He can defend an opposing wing. He can body you in the post. He can do a lot of different things. He's just a glue guy, a hustle guy, and he just really fills a lot of the voids on the wing for this Illini team. And then finally, you bring back Georgi Bashanishvili, who is coming off the bench this year, but again, he's very skilled for his size. Tends to struggle against length and quickness, but overall, he's just kind of a solid guy. He can put the ball in the basket. He's shown an ability to pass and find open cutters, and really, he's just kind of a team guy that Illinois really needs. So you have those 3 returners that are just really key alongside Ayo and Kofi, and then you add in 2 freshmen who I really like. Adam Miller was a top 50 guy, went to the same high school as Ayo, and he is just a lights-out shooter. He's averaging around 13 points a game right now and shooting blistering percentages from 3, so he's going to be a very nice long-term piece for Illinois, assuming he stays past his freshman year. And then you also get Andre Curbelo, who, in my opinion, might be the most fun player to watch in America. The guy has an effortless handle. He sees the floor extremely well, super quick, really good handle on the ball, turns it over a bit much and tends to make the home run play a little too often, but right now you have to love the electricity that Curbelo brings to this Illinois team. And really, the one key weakness for Illinois is that I'm not really sure how much depth they have on the wing. They have Jacob Grandison, who is a transfer from Holy Cross, and you also have Coleman Hawkins, who is a top 150 guy in high school. Those 2 guys have been getting limited minutes right now, but I think one of them really needs to crack the rotation consistently in order for this Illinois team to reach its ceiling, which is obviously a national championship. So overall, I really like Illinois. I think Ayo Dosunmu might be one of the best players in the country, if not the best player. And really, this combination of NBA-level talent, guys who know their role, and then young, budding superstar freshmen really makes for a lot for a team that already plays really hard. And listen, their offense is currently top 10 in America, and that's a big improvement. So if they can keep at that pace, Illinois is going to be looking really good for this season. Next team on my Magic 8, I have Creighton. I love Creighton because they have one of the most aesthetically pleasing offenses to watch in America. At some point, just watchability has to be a factor in terms of picking these teams. What team would I want to see win it all so I can watch more of them? It would definitely be Creighton. Their offense is just so fluid. They pass the ball extremely well. So many backdoor cuts, so many nice slips, things like that. And listen, they shoot the ball really well. They have shooters all over the floor, and it starts with Marcus Zagorowski, the junior 6'2" point guard. Had some knee issues towards the end of last season, but right now he looks pretty healthy, if not 100%, and he is really the engine for this offense. Really good passer, can get into the lane well, can finish at the rim somewhat consistently, and he is just the guy who makes everything work for the Blue Jays. He's a guy who's a knockdown shooter from all 3 levels, and he should be the favorite for Big East Player of the Year this season. You also get Mitch Ballack back for his senior year. This was a guy who was offered by Kansas but ended up deciding to go to Creighton. And listen, this guy might be one of the best shooters in America, especially from the corners. This guy has lights out. You can run him off pin downs and flare screens, and he's just a guy who will shoot the ball extremely well and also provide nice fluidity to your offense. He's a guy who doesn't really need the ball in his hands for an extended amount of time to do something meaningful with it. And so he and Zegarowski are really the two guys who I'm really looking forward to watching this season for Creighton. After that, you have a bunch of players who I would consider high-end glue guys. You have Denzel Mahoney, who tested the NBA draft waters before ultimately coming back to Creighton. He's a guy who can hit big-time shots. He can defend the perimeter extremely well, and he's a guy who can get his nose in for loose balls and just kind of bring that energy and hustle to that Creighton team. You also have Damian Jefferson, who is probably one of the best rebounders for his size. I think he's only around 6'5", but he can get boards with the best of them in the country, and he's just another one who just knows his role extremely well. And again, doesn't really need the ball to be effective. He's a play finisher. He can score on post-ups and open layups. He can also defend in the post extremely well too, which is something that Creighton desperately needs given their personnel. Their starting center is Christian Bishop, who is a bit undersized at 6'7", but he is another one who can just finish plays above the rim, rather athletic going vertically. Can't really afford to get him in foul trouble though, because Creighton's front court is rather thin, but he's a guy who can go up, get lobs, finish plays, and defend the rim rather well given Creighton's personnel. After that, you have three guys off the bench who I really like. You have Antoine Jones, who's a Memphis transfer, and he just adds a lot of athleticism on the wing given his 6'6" frame. He can finish plays, he can shoot it a little bit, and he could also defend, so I really like him as kind of the sixth man for Creighton. You also have Sharif Mitchell as a backup guard. Pretty small, but he's just a bulldog defensively, can get in opposing guards' grills, and just one of those guys who's an energy player, will get steals and initiate fast breaks and things like that. Needs to learn to play a little bit more in control, but I really like the kind of lightning in a bottle feel that Mitchell brings to Creighton. And then finally, you end it with a little bit of a wild card, a 6'11" freshman named Ryan Kalkbrenner. This guy led the EYBL in blocked shots his senior year, and he's really skinny right now. But again, for a team that desperately needs rim protection and just overall size, Kalkbrenner should play a pretty important role off the bench. I'm not sure if he's going to get a whole lot of minutes, but again, for a guy who can just protect the rim and has that natural shot blocking feel, he will definitely need to be an important piece for Creighton if they want to win a national championship. So overall, I really like Creighton because of their offense, but I do worry about their lack of size. It's just going to be a matter of how well they shoot the three. And given their history, they should be one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country, and that always gives you a shot in the NCAA tournament. For the next team in my Magic 8, give me the Baylor Bears. I really like Baylor. They've returned so much of their team from last year. Their perimeter attack is one of the best in the country, if not the best in America. You have Jared Butler, who, as many of you know, I had as a first-round prospect on my board before he decided to return to Waco for his junior season. Macy Oteague is another one who can shoot the ball extremely well and get to the basket with either hand. Davion Mitchell is an absolute dog defensively, and he also has shown the ability to shoot from three this season as well. So again, that three-headed monster to start in the backcourt is really good. That's good enough to win a national championship right there. And again, just to reiterate, I literally think Jared Butler would have been a first-round pick if he stayed in the NBA draft this year, but he decides to return, and now he is just the star player for a team that is either the second best or best in a lot of AP voters' ballots. So Baylor, I really like. Off the bench, you have Adam Flagler, the transfer from Presbyterian. And listen, he's really good as well. He's going to come off the bench this year for Baylor, but he's a guy who can get you 20 points if you need him to. And that perimeter is just absolutely loaded. The front court is definitely more thin than the backcourt, but they certainly have talent there as well. Mark Vital is just an overall energy guy, a hustle glue guy, whatever you want to say. He's just someone who plays bigger than his size. He can box out extremely well. He grabs a lot of rebounds, gets 50-50 balls, and is really just one of the anchors of Baylor's elite defense. And so I'm expecting a big season from him. They also have Flo Thamba in the front court. Not expected to get a whole lot of run, but he is starting at that center position for now. A guy I really like, though, is Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua, the transfer from UNLV, and he just brings such energy to the floor. He's a play finisher. He's an absolute lob threat. Big-time hustle player. Will get on the floor for loose balls, get rebounds, do all the dirty work. And again, I just love the way his play style and Baylor's system really mesh together. I think he's going to have a really good season. And he's the guy who's going to come up with really key rebounds. He's just going to outwork people on the floor. and he will be one to watch for the coming season. You also have Matt Mayer, who is a wing/power forward. He can shoot the ball very well. He also has shown an improved off-the-dribble game. He can get to the rim way easier than he could last year, which I think is a nice sign for his progression as a player. And that's 8 guys right there, and I'm not even including LJ Cryer, who is a top 100 freshman that Baylor signed. And if he can get legit minutes, I think this Baylor team is pretty loaded in the backcourt. And again, it's going to be the guards that carry this team. They are thin in the front court. That's my main worry about them. But again, their defense is so good, one of the best in the country. And it all starts with that backcourt and Jared Butler. So Baylor is definitely a Magic 8 team in my mind. Next on my Magic 8, I have the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Pretty much the consensus number 1 team in the country at this time. And for good reason. Listen, they play like an NBA team in terms of the sets they run, in terms of how they're coached, and just overall in terms of how they play. They have NBA guys all over the floor, starting with none other than Jalen Suggs. The point guard from Minnesota has been a revelation this year. I personally wasn't even that high on him coming in. I thought he was going to be okay, probably a first rounder. But right now, it's taking all of my energy to really not have him number 1 on my board as it stands. I've been so impressed with him from his 24.8 assist debut against Kansas to his toughness and coming back to play against West Virginia after that ankle injury. I really have been impressed with Suggs. Again, one of the best passers in the draft class and in college basketball today. Can hit every read out of a pick and roll. And again, putting him in that Gonzaga offense that features so many shooters and so much skill is just an absolute wrecking ball right now. You add in Corey Kispert, the wing, who could have gone to the NBA. I think he would have gotten drafted. He's back and he's shooting lights out. I think he's averaging around 23 points a game. And after that, you have Drew Timme, who's been really solid in the post after a promising freshman season backing up Filip Petrusev. He has now taken the reins and he's shown the ability to finish with both hands around the basket and also move his feet quite well defensively. So those 3 guys for Gonzaga definitely make up a winning core. And then you throw in Joel Ayayi, who again, I was really high on him coming into the 2020 draft. He elects to stay at Gonzaga, and now he's probably the 5th best player on this roster, which is insane to think about because I really like Ayayi, but there just is so much talent on the floor that he almost gets overlooked. But he's a guy who was one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball. He's a smart, heady player, needs to cool it a little bit on offense in terms of his decision making, but right now he's a great 4th or 5th option. And then you bring in Andrew Nembhard, the transfer from Florida, and he got his waiver right before their first game against Kansas, and he's been awesome as well in his backup role. And he's a guy who could be starting on 99% of teams in the country. So it's just an abundance of riches for Gonzaga. You bring in Anton Watson, who's getting minutes at that small forward spot, and he's done well, even though he looks a little bit lost at the 3. I think he's more of a natural 4, but again, he'll probably come along nicely as the season progresses. And then you get Baby Shaq, Oumar Ballo, who's looked very good in very limited minutes, needs to work on staying out of foul trouble and just his overall feel for the game. But Gonzaga, I think, really got a diamond in the rough with Ballo. He's a guy who can just overpower teams physically, and that's pretty much what Gonzaga needs from him this season. His ceiling is obviously higher than just a bruiser, but right now he's filling his role pretty perfectly for Gonzaga. So you get all those, and then you also add in Southern Illinois transfer Aaron Cook, who's going to provide nice guard wing minutes off the bench, and you got yourself a roster. That big 3 of Suggs, Timme, and Kispert is pretty much unmatched in college basketball. And then you throw them into a Mark Few offense, and their offense is probably one of the best to watch in the country. They actually made me enjoy watching college basketball, which is very rare nowadays considering the amount of AAU play that's going on right now. But overall, Gonzaga is definitely my favorite watch early in the season, and I'm expecting them to make a very deep run in the NCAA tournament, and that's why I have them in my Magic 8. Next team on my Magic 8, I have the Kansas Jayhawks. I really just like the composure and discipline that Kansas plays with. I think Bill Self has done an excellent job thus far coaching this team up. Not the most talented team he's had in Lawrence during his tenure there, but it's probably one of the most hardworking and intelligent teams I've seen him put on the floor. I really like putting the experience on the floor with Marcus Garrett and Ochai Agbaji. Marcus Garrett is obviously the reigning National Defensive Player of the Year, and I think he's an excellent addition to that backcourt. You also bring back Ochai Agbaji, who is just a guy who can knock down open shots and defend at a pretty high level. So I really like that backcourt tandem for Kansas right off the bat. Even though Marcus Garrett and Ochai are probably playing out of position slightly, I do think it'll work for this season after further reflection. On the wings, Jalen Wilson has been an absolute revelation. He's looking like a first-round pick. He's a 6'8 forward who can shoot the ball well. He can put it on the floor and score, get layups when you need him to. He's a good defender, has decent length, and he's a guy that Kansas desperately needed to step up, and I'm happy he did after being out with a foot injury all all of last season. So that's good for Kansas, and it's good for Jalen Wilson, who I'm guessing won't be staying in Lawrence very long past this year. You also bring back David McCormick to kind of bolster that front court. He gives Kansas a really nice down-low option, even though he won't be the main focal point of this offense, as this offense is definitely more 4-out, 1-in, rather than one that values post play. McCormick is just kind of a guy who you can throw the ball down to and see if he can get an easy basket. And I think he's definitely a reliable safety valve for this Jayhawk offense when they get into trouble. They're also going to need him to play well defensively as kind of that front court anchor. You're going to see him block shots. You're going to see him try and move and take charges and things like that. And I think that's definitely a necessary requirement for McCormick this year. We'll see if he can do it, but right now he's looked pretty good in that role. You also bring back Christian Brown, who was a pretty good player as a freshman last season. He's a really good shooter, also can put it on the floor and rise up and finish through contact. And I think he's a valuable starter for this Kansas team that desperately needs shooting, and he will certainly provide it. Off the bench, I really like three guys that Kansas has, the first one being Bryce Thompson. Thompson was a 5-star recruit from Oklahoma. He's currently a freshman coming off the bench right now, and he certainly had his ups and downs, but I really like what he brings in terms of his off-the-dribble shooting and just overall scoring package that I think he'll get more confidence in as the season goes on. You also have Tyon Grant Foster, a JUCO guy who can make open threes and just provide floor spacing, and then Kansas has a guy who I really like in DeJuan Harris. He is the true point guard on this roster. He hasn't gotten a whole lot of run yet, but I expect his minutes to increase as Kansas's need for a point guard comes more and more to the forefront once we get into conference play. He's a guy who can make plays on the defensive end, and he can also find open teammates. I really like what he's done in limited playing times thus far. I think the biggest concern for Kansas is definitely that front court depth. You really only have David McCormick, and then you're kind of hoping that Mitch Lightfoot or Tristan Anaruda kind of step up and take that backup center power forward minutes. Neither of them are true centers by any stretch, but they're going to have to play a lot of 5 just to keep Kansas viable on the backboards at some points this season. David McCormick can't be out there for all 40 minutes, and he will get into foul trouble at some points, so one of those two, Anaruda or Lightfoot, need to step up and provide quality minutes. Neither of them have done so thus far. Anaruda has looked okay in the recent games, but right now I'm still very worried about that front court depth for Kansas. Regardless, though, I think this team is extremely well coached. I think they hustle. I think they also do an excellent job keeping their composure. You can tell this is a veteran team, and veteran teams tend to do well in March. Old wins. Remember that in college basketball. We talk about the one and dones and the youth movement, but old wins in college basketball. Just remember that. Kansas has a lot of experience, a lot of veterans, and I expect them to be around late in March. The final team in my Magic 8 is the sleeper team, so the team outside the current top 15 of the AP rankings, and that is the Florida State Seminoles. Listen, I really like Florida State because of that elite depth that they always provide. Leonard Hamilton is known for playing 10 to 11 guys every game, and I expect that trend to continue as we head into this season. They obviously lost Devin Vassell, Patrick Williams, and Trent Forrest, but overall I really like the roster that they return. MJ Walker is a senior who is an All-American coming out of high school. He's going to average around 16 to 17 points a game for this team. He had some huge games last year for the Seminoles, and I expect that trend to continue, given that he should see a lot more of the ball in his senior season. You also add Scotty Barnes, who is basically a 6'9" point guard, and he can pass the rock really well. He can finish at the basket. Definitely a little bit raw in terms of his shooting, but he will provide defense. He'll provide passing, playmaking, so he will definitely be a valued member of this roster. Other than that, though, you have a bunch of guys who I expect to play their roles extremely well. That's kind of what Florida State's built their program around. Nobody's really a big-time star, but they're all really good at what they do. So you have guys like Anthony Polite, who I think will provide really good defense and really good shooting. You have a Raekwon Gray, who is a big, thick, 6'6" power forward who can handle the ball a little bit, he can shoot a little bit, and he could also grab a lot of rebounds for you. You have Balsa Koprivica, who was a freshman last year, but now is looking to start his sophomore year, and he's going to be a guy that Leonard Hamilton loves having on the floor, as he's 7 foot, he's big, he's strong, he could grab rebounds, block shots, and do all the things that you would want a traditional big man to do. From there, you have Raekwon Evans off the bench, who can provide backup point guard minutes as well as off-ball shooting, which is key for Florida State. You have a Malik Osborne, who's coming off the bench this year, but he was a starter last year. He's a big 6'8", 6'9" stretch 4 that will play a little bit of the 3 as well, and he's one who can knock down open shots, he can defend, he can block shots, do a lot of different things for Florida State. You have Sardar Calhoun, a JUCO transfer who's 6'6", and he's going to be a guy who can get you buckets in a hurry. And so you have all these pieces at Florida State, and they may not have the flashiest names, but together they're going to be one of the best teams in the ACC, if not the country. And there are 4 guys who I think might have breakout seasons in a limited capacity. You have Wyatt Wilkes, you have Nathaniel Jack, you have Tanner Ngam, and then you have Quincy Ballard. Those guys will get limited playing time, I'd imagine, but I think they're going to be crucial as 9th, 10th, 11th guys for Florida State to really reach their ceiling this year. But I really like this Florida State team despite all the players they lost. I still trust Leonard Hamilton. He's been cranking out really good teams in Tallahassee for the last 3 or 4 years. I expect this year to be no different, and that's why Florida State is my sleeper team to win the national championship in 2021. So now you guys have my official Magic 8 for the 2020-2021 NCAA basketball season. And just to recap, those teams are Michigan State, Tennessee, Illinois, Creighton, Baylor, Gonzaga, Kansas, and Florida State. Those are my 8 teams. You could book it now. One of those 8 teams will win the national championship. Put futures on all of them because one of those teams is definitely a winner. So from there, it's time to reveal my Final 4 and national champion picks. So for my Final 4, give me Illinois, give me Baylor, give me Gonzaga, and give me Florida State. So I have those 4 teams in my Final 4. And for my national champion, give me the Baylor Bears. I really like Baylor because of their experienced guard play and veteran leadership. You need guard play in March. You need leadership in March. Baylor has a lot of both, and I'm taking Baylor to win the national championship in 2021. See you next video, and sick 'em.